So, George, how are you keeping, man? You look incredible.
Yeah, you know what? I think like most people, to start with, I rallied against it. And then eventually I kind of thought, right, what am I going to do with this space? Because I haven't had this kind of space for years. So I've just been making so much music. I do art as well. So I've been making art and I've just been being creative and really relishing the fact that I've never had a year off.
Well, no.
That is just so un-British, just like,
We come from working class backgrounds, right? You're told you've got to always keep working hard. It's drummed into you from a very early age, isn't it?
It is, but it's quite nice to. I definitely want to make sure once we do go back to work that I do find time to also do what I really enjoy doing, and that is being in the studio, writing, making the things. I'm not so interested these days in having to go out and sell it. And also, the thing is, people don't buy records anymore anyway, so there's a kind of freedom in that. You just put them up online. And, at the moment, I'm just releasing stuff all the time, finishing it, putting it out, no announcement, not telling people it's out. Because I take the view that when a lot of the great records that I love, I heard them by accident in someone's bedroom.
Yeah.
My friend Rhonda in Birmingham was the one that played the Sly and the Family Stone Fresh. And that was, in the beginning of me going, oh, this band's amazing. And, so many great things I either heard through my brother's bedroom door or, wherever, random places, not necessarily on the radio. I wasn't spoon-fed it. Nobody told me to like it. And so, I sort of feel like I've got back to that sort of freedom of like, well, I'm not making records for radio. I'm not against radio, but I'm not, so that's never my criteria. So I'm always telling people I work with, make the music longer. Like,
well,
I did turning into a concept track.
Yeah, we can afford to do that now. If I do any stuff for you, I guarantee it won't be commercial. Don't worry. It'll
I think but Martin, I would say that we both have a strong pop sensibility. It's unavoidable. So it may not be commercial in the terms of fitting into a stereotype, but I bet you will come up with something very melodic, and I certainly will do my best to.
People will fucking love it, and I don't care. And that's the great thing, isn't it? The freedom that you get from not really worrying anymore. I mean, we were lucky, when let's face it. We grew up.
Lucky in some ways, and because I think I always say that, like, fame is a double-edged sword, because once you get famous, you start a band. Of course, you want to be famous. There's no denying that, but you don't really know what it's going to entail. And I think fame can become a sort of third job. You've got the band, and then suddenly, if you're the lead singer, oh, whoa, and you end up sort of, just doing all this stuff to promote the band. And I think you're always trying to balance, even at this point, you're always trying to balance the love with the gig. You want to do what you love, but you also want to pay the rent. And so it's always a little, everything is a negotiation.
Have you ever considered that you are anything less than authentic to what you feel that you want to create? I mean, a lot of people do. They'll do any old shit.
No, there's been times when I haven't been necessarily fully engaged emotionally with what I'm doing.
Right.
And so I look at those things as maybe not my best work, but nothing that I'm kind of like, oh God, there's a few things, that a couple of things I was talked into doing, and just sort of, oh, well, it might be a nice opportunity, convince myself to do it. And then afterwards went, I should never have done that. I think I've got better at following my instincts now. Because I will say, for me, what I've learned this year is that songwriting is a bit like grouting or bricklaying. Really, you have to just get better at it. It's not something that you should shy away from. And one of the things I've been doing this year is really embracing my influences in a way that I always did, but lied about it. Now when I'm writing a song, I've said to you when we spoke on the phone that you sent me a text, and then I was like, oh, Martin, I was working on this thing, and I thought, what would he do here?
Oh.
I just came up with this like real like Scott Walker-y. I sang it to you, I think, on the phone.
Yeah.
I've recorded it yet, but I thought that is very BF,
Yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it. I'm up for it. I'm really up for it. You inspired me a little bit with the whole idea of looking back at the kind of You've Lost That Love and Feeling approach, because I've not really done anything like that since then. That's 40 odd years ago. So
it's one of my favourite tunes. I mean, I loved all that sort of early kind of electro music. You know, it was, you know, because I went to all those clubs where they played it. You know, people like yourself and people like Fad Gadget and people like even Gary Newman. Eventually, I kind of started to fall in love with that as well. You know, so. And I never made those records. So I've been making quite a few records based around, you know, that period. So I've done a few things. I've done this track called When Nothing Made Sense, which is basically channeling, you know, that period. When nothing made sense.
Can you should send me a link to that. I'd love to hear it. So I looked at, I'd done some weird interviews today. I did Professor Brian Cox earlier, and I
was thinking about him earlier because we had a rap about star signs.
Oh, okay.
What's a load of old rubbish? And I was like, Brian. Oh, that's like saying there's a wizard behind the curtain. That's very pessimistic. So I said, what do you think about star signs? And he said something along the lines of, they're an abomination to science. And I went,
oh dear. It's a bit
typical Pisces.
He's a bit precious about his primacy in that field, should we say? But
yeah, but I do think that I find him interesting, actually.
Yeah, he's like a Duracell bunny. I just kind of put the batteries in, and then he talked non-stop for 10 minutes about black holes, and I'm going, okay, this is like podcast gold. And anyway, no, it's fascinating, I have to say. I just want to have a quick kind of evocation of the kind of Blitz period and Lee Bowery and that kind of period. And I'm sure you've talked about this a million times, but, you know, maybe because I'm coming at it from a slightly different direction. I was quite daunted by the whole Blitz thing because I thought maybe if I turn up at the door and they don't recognise me, because I was not particularly fashionable at that point, and I thought, can't face the idea of the rejection, so I went once and that was it, you know, even though I loved the idea of it all. And I mean, tell me,
like walking the plank every week. It was very much like, you know, everybody that went to this was like, what if I don't get in, you know? And you had to sort of go there really with the attitude they would never turn me away. But of course that was always an option depending on what mood Steve, God bless him, was in. But that was the whole nature of the club, because it was trying to be Studio 54. It was an echo of that. And it was about, you know, Steve famously turned away Mick Jagger, which I thought was horrific. So I was like, how could you turn Mick Jagger away from a nightclub? I mean, this is wrong on every level. But it was what made the club kind of more exciting. The fact that even Mick Jagger might get turned away for wearing jeans. So there was a, you know, and also, let's face it, Philip Salon always used to say, you wouldn't go to the Queen's Garden party in a pair of dungarees. So why should you turn up at someone when they specifically said it's a costume party or it's just a event? Don't be arrogant and turn up in civvies. You know, make an effort.
I think there's a good point. It's quite a northern thing, actually, as well, that, you know, there are certain clubs in Sheffield where you just couldn't get in unless you made an effort. Yeah, the too cool for school thing was very much more of a kind of southern thing.
Can I say to you though, you know, at that point when you were going to Blitz, you were musically, you were the height of fashion. You were the coolest thing in the world. I'm allowed to say that.
Oh well, no, it's very kind of you, mate. But I don't.
I saw you at the Lyceum with Gary Glitter. We won't mention him again. But I went to that gig myself and Jeremy Healy. Went to your gig. We went to see you,
right?
And that was one of the only gigs I think I ever saw you with the Human League. But we went in these kind of quasi sort of 70s outfits. We found these old sort of 70s Mac jackets, had platforms on, and we had these wigs. So, you know, it was quite sort of mullet looking. And I ended up, obviously, you know, seeing you guys at that point was like, wow, it was so alien because there was no instruments. You had the planks, you know, the banks of computers. And it was just, it was really exciting to be at that gig because you're like, wow, is this the future? Is this the end of the regular bands, you know? And some of that stuff still now to me just sounds like it could have been made yesterday.
Yeah, the intention was definitely to make it kind of timeless, but it was alien as well. It kind of, to me, I always regarded it as like what we were doing. It's not, we weren't trained musicians at all. I mean, I can still don't read.
Deconstructing classical in a funny sort of way. You were deconstructing really classical soul, the
Yeah.
Scott Walker thing. So you were using those elements. We were just putting them together in a way that was different.
That's really very kind of you, because not many people actually got it like you stated it there. They just thought, oh, 10 bob Kraftwerk, but we weren't aiming to be Kraftwerk. It wasn't that at all. It was more soul filter, that lens.
I think, but if anyone that was a musician and anyone that was, even if you were a club kid, I think you got what you guys were doing. It was kind of, there were lots of great contradictions in what you were doing, the way that you were suited and booted, all of that stuff, the kind of glamour. It was just before the whole upwardly mobile thing. So you almost like predicted the yuppie, it was like, we
thought it was ironic, but then it became non-ironic, it became reality. It's a bit like, yeah, you understood it.
I understood the irony myself, in the same way that when Morrissey came along, we would all be in ribbons and bows, and Morrissey turns up with the hearing aid and a pair of cords on. And suddenly it's like, and so that's what it should do, and that's what makes it fun and exciting.
And when you started Culture Club, because obviously we're on the same label and everything. In fact, I did an interview with Simon Draper the other day, who I've not talked to for like 30 years.
Is he wearing shorts?
Oh no, he wasn't. He's not very well, the poor lad. He had some back operation that went wrong, and he was like hospitalised for 3 months or something. Anyway, it was good to talk to him, and because he revealed a lot of stuff that I didn't understand was going on at the time. Like, Culture Club saved Virgin. You were earning, and these are his words, and it's on record, it'll come out soon. You literally were the cash flow for Virgin at that point.
Yeah.
You were earning unimaginable amounts of money for them.
I think there was a few bobs still, but anyway, it was a mad thing, because when we started the band, we had our first hit, I think, in Belgium. It went on the radio in Belgium. So that was our first trip abroad. That was my first trip out of the country. And we went around Europe on that trip, and we were literally, the offices were in people's living rooms. And as the years went by, we saw these, buildings go up, and suddenly Virgin became a proper company. But in the early days, all the European branches were just literally people's houses. And
that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a mad time. And then, of course, Phil Collins took over at one point.
Yes.
And there were these graphs. Do you remember the graphs up the wall that they had? Every time he sold another.
So cheesy, yeah.
No, but it was like, if you were, because it was at the time when we weren't selling as many records, it was a fourth album drama. And it was just like torture seeing these, like, charts getting bigger and bigger and going further around the building.
I think I was, must have been quite naive at that point, because I didn't take any notice of that shit. I just thought, by that time, we were so both of us, I mean, both bands, we were so fortunate to have the resources to make the music that you wanted without, in our case, without very much interference, frankly. Do you ever get any kind of interference from the record company? Did you get?
Well, I don't have a record company. I was signed a couple of years ago to BMG, and now I'm not with that.
No, I meant back in the day with Virgin.
Back in the day, oh God, yes. Come on, the music industry is an industry full of no's. Everything's a no. Well, we can't do that, because you're sort of, once you go into a record deal, you're sort of stuck in a system, unless you're lucky to kind of continue being successful. And you never sort of fall off the ladder, as I have done many times. Have to get back on again. It's not so easy. But I think that people did. When you're doing very well, no one says anything.
Yeah.
When you're doing well, everyone's quiet.
Success has many friends, yeah.
It's only when radio says, "Oh, I'm not sure about this single," then you start getting, that sort of interference and, I think, there are compromises that you have to make as an artist, but you have to you have to work out which ones are acceptable to you. And as I've got older, you know, sort of being told about my music by people that have never written a song, never written a lyric, never been in a studio, I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't go in, you know, a football coach wouldn't say, someone that want to come out of the stands and take this penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's got to be something said for, you know, and actually, you know, you guys and us to a certain extent, but because you were more electro, but you were the beginning of a whole kind of making it easier for people to now make records because, you know, computers came along, you know, you guys were using, you know, a lot of great technology. And so that was the beginning, actually. You were the forerunners for that. And now, obviously, there are a lot of people out there who think all it takes is a bunch of leads to the computer.
Pandora's box is open, it won't shut, will it? That's the problem.
That makes it different. I mean, listen, it's not, as I say, I think what I try to do nowadays is focus on what I like. You know, and to me, it doesn't matter whether anyone else likes it or, you know, whether that's my music or other people's. But if I like something, it only really has to make sense to me. But then I guess you'd understand that as an artist, you know, other people just don't feel the same excitement about our music that we do. They're like, yeah, it's nice. You know, they almost have to be told it's okay, you know?
Oh, God, no. Really? Oh, God.
I think so. I think, is it cool? It's a very British thing, London thing then. Maybe it's more of a Southern thing.
No, I really don't know. I think, I don't know, I can't comprehend not being passionate about music because it's just, I don't know, I've always loved it. So, as a fan and as a critic.
When you love it, you know, it's like, it's a passion that some people just can't understand, you know, but when you're in it the way that we are, you know, it's just, you know, it never gets boring when you hear
Never.
You just when you find that hook, or you just find one sentence, you know, that is just a killer line.
Oh my God! I've always say that, particularly to young artists, I do a lot of education now, and I say to them, look, there's a point where you're doing a recording, and there's this magic turning point, this pivot, where it stops sounding like a recording and starts sounding like a record. And nowadays, you kind of mix songs as you go along, don't you? And
I like that.
Yeah, I like that. But the back in the day, of course, it wouldn't really come together until the mix, would it? So that pivot point would happen somewhere halfway down the mix if you were lucky. But now it can happen quite early in the process, which I think is quite liberating because then you go, okay, I don't think I need to add any more, or I don't need to refine it anymore. Let's just keep it raw. And so I you know, experience teaches you this stuff, doesn't it?
And I think also for me, like in terms of being a singer, I kind of, you know, I actually sometimes go, do you know what? It's kind of imperfect, but let's leave it.
Yes.
It expresses what I'm actually feeling. And I think that's great. So, you know, I'm kind of got a bit tired of this over perfection.
Yes.
Not hearing any flaws and any bumps and grooves. And I think it's important to, I feel like that will come back, you know, that kind of raspy, soulful, the road is in my voice.
Well, you know, come on, there's lots of examples of people who are soulful singers who don't come from the soul world. They don't, I mean, you know, obviously you've got a great voice and a great kind of soul influence and a certain amount of reggae influence and etc., etc. But there used to be singers in the 70s and 80s who could barely hold a note. I mean, you know, they were even poets, weren't they, who made records and stuff, you know. And I kind of liked all that stuff.
No, listen, you know, there are some, I've always loved unusual voices from Nico. You know, David Bowie didn't necessarily have the most classic voice, but he had a unique voice. And of course, a lot of that came from the great Anthony Newley. So,
yeah.
You know, he's one of my obsessions. I watch him a lot, particularly if I'm about to perform.
Really?
Oh yeah. Once in a
lifetime. But destiny calls me. I love him.
Just the beauty, you know, just the arm movements, just the sort of, you know, one of the reasons why I'm obsessed with Joan Collins is Anthony Newley. I'm like, what a pair they were.
Wow. Yeah. Joan Collins. Yeah. My God, she could.
Married to the great Anthony Newley.
Were they married?
They were married, yeah.
Well, you learn something new every
They've
time.
got a daughter called Tara Newley, who I've also worked with. Yeah.
I bet that wasn't a dull relationship.
Not at all. And Tara, Tara's actually gone off to be a mum now, but she did write some really great songs, actually.
Really?
It was a shame that she didn't continue it, but some people just aren't cut out for the sort of stresses of show business.
No. What? Right. I've always, excuse me, loved your songwriting. I mean, I think you're just a great song. It's just, timeless. You could probably put it in different contexts, and it was still. I mean, I don't mean everything that pours out of you is genius, but I think you're a very good songwriter, and I think you're a craftsman. And I'm kind of curious to know what you feel is your best work. I mean, which songs are you? Which songs or which period are you most proud of?
Now,
Yeah,
no, what I'm doing at the moment, because this year, because I've kind of, as I said, I've gone back into this kind of, I mean, I've always in the studio played records that I love, or listen to this sound, and I think in the last year, I've just got much freer with all that.
Right.
Allowing my influences to just be, because when you're writing a song, sometimes, like, for example, I gave you earlier, you called me and I was working on Speaks Music and I was like, what's the hook? You've always got to find the hook. It's got to be something simple and clever and profound. And I literally was like, what would BAF do? And sometimes when I'm writing a song, I might think, oh, this has got a bit of a Roxy feel. What would Brian Ferry say? What would be the opening line? Brian Ferry's song. I read this thing recently where I had to go back and record it because I was really doing Brian Ferry. I was like, oh no, that's and then, like, the idea was like, oh, she was with that dress, and I was like, no. I went back and obviously when I'm recording, always a lot of Bowie creeps into what I do because he was a massive influence on me, and I don't think that's one of my favorite reference points. I always say it's Bowie, Joni Mitchell, massive fan of Joni Mitchell. Lyrically, Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Leonard Cohen, those types.
Yeah.
They're the people that I aspire to write like. But I also like that kind of deadpan British Morrissey thing. I think Morrissey is an incredible writer. And I use a lot of. I often say to people, "This is so Smith." I was like Morrissey because, I just couldn't wait to tell you all about love. Just throwing things out that in the way that, and I like the way, the sort of cockeyed way he looks at things.
Yeah.
When he's talking about love, lines like, beware I bear more grudges than lonely high court judges,
Oh, nice.
Genius lyric. The more you ignore me, the closer I get. It's such a me song. Often when I listen to Murray's lyrics, I think, wow, it's like he's in my head. He knows what I'm thinking. And I love using, I think he's a really good British poet. I'm not necessarily keen on his political views right now, but I really love him as a writer. And,
It's interesting. But I've got a question. Is Morrissey, has he got Irish blood?
He has, yeah. Isn't it? Irish blood, English heart. That was the lyric. Yeah, he's partly Irish.
So you're Irish. John Lydon, another unique.
What a bunch of
Arsehole.
what a bunch of troublemakers.
Well, not an arsehole. He's an arsehole. A troublemaker. Bunch of troublemakers, basically. Yeah. But I just did an interview with Roisin Murphy, who I'm in love with, I have to say. I think she's an incredible artist. Yeah. And it's, I luckily enough, I managed to get an Irish passport because both my grandmothers are Irish. So it turns out I'm married to an Irish woman, but more Irish DNA-wise than she is, which is ironic. Oh, yeah. Anyway, so I have a natural kind of affinity with Irish influence. And I think it's a big deal to be made out of what has come out of the Irish DNA in terms of entertainment and music and creativity. What do you think?
Well, my grandfather was my mother's father was a real poet. He was he was a creative. And my mum always says that's where my sort of sense of humor came from. My granddad used to write these mad poems about, social issues. And, he was a sort of, he just was a natural creative, a singer, but Irish people are very, they're like the Italians. They love singing. I don't know if you've ever sung, I sing a little bit of Italian, and I've been at a few like fun dinners in Italy where I've just sort of sang a bit, and then everyone starts singing, and then suddenly the whole restaurant starts singing. I think Irish people also have that great affinity with music and drinking, and there's always live music everywhere you go in the country, and I think music is in the Irish blood, definitely.
And human connection and expression and narrative, and is very, it's a solid thread throughout what it means to be alive in Ireland, still now.
And even as people, I grew up in London. Obviously, my parents were Irish, but I grew up in London. But I was very aware of being Irish because my name was George O'Dowd, and I grew up in the 70s when all that stuff was going on. All the bombings were going on and stuff. So, there were always comments being made about Birmingham, and he would make jokes. So I was very conscious of my Irishness, even though, some people might refer to me as a plastic paddy. But, recently I did the Who Do You Think You Are? And I found out that my great uncle was a freedom fighter. So that was quite a nice thing to discover. Thomas Bryan, he married my cousin in 1921. He was hung by the British for treason. And he was there were 7. It was Kevin Barry and his men, and they were a few years ago. They were all repatriated to the main graveyard in Dublin. So they were given a sort of heroes return, and I was able to go and visit his grave, and I learned some very sad stuff about my family, what happened to him. It was just so sad. I went to where he was hung. It was quite an incredible thing to experience.
Shit. It's funny because my wife, Lansley, she's from Armagh, and obviously he was in the middle of the Troubles still when we met, Fucking hell. And it's tough. And I saw like Chinook helicopters landing in their backfield and stuff like this, and chasing the UVF into the tunnels, and oh my God.
And one thing I would say about the Northern Irish people, they're very, very sweet. When I first went there, I was quite scared because, my family is from the South. But when I actually went and played in Northern Ireland, I was like, oh my God, the people are so adorable. They've really got the most friendliest, not everyone, obviously, but there was it wasn't what I expected at all. So I love Northern Ireland.
Yeah. And she taught me, she's funny because she lives near the border, and part of her family were Catholic and part were Protestant, and she wants reunification basically because I think it would be good for everyone at this stage, to be honest. And so she educated me about the wolf tones and all the kind of rebel songs and all that stuff. Yeah. Some of that stuff is incredible. A lot of terrible things happened to the Irish, for many, many years. They went through a lot, and, there was lots of cruelty, There's that fabulous song by Joni Mitchell called The Magdalene Laundries, which is all about what happened to, these girls that got pregnant. Sometimes pretty sent off to these wash houses. So there was a lot of things that went on in Ireland that were terrible, but it is such a beautiful place. Oh, it really is. That's what that Steve Coogan film was about, wasn't it? Yeah. That thing. Tell me about Taboo then. What a fucking amazing achievement to get. I know you probably went through hell to get there, but what an amazing achievement to get your next light on Broadway. Come on.
Guess what, though? We're actually talking, myself and the original writer were talking about doing Taboo, the sequel, because the show kind of got stole off us, as they always do. So many people were involved in that show. And one of the first things that was said to the writer, and this is 20 years ago, you couldn't say it now. One of the first things was said, don't make the show too gay. Can you believe that?
What the fuck?
So, which is quite funny since it had myself, Lee Bowery, Philip Sutherland, and Marilyn in it. It was really...
Don't make it too gay. What planet are they on?
Oh, make the show together. And so I want to write. I'm talking with Davis Markham about writing a new one where you actually address all the things that went on, and sort of almost talk about what you learned. What did you learn in all those experiences? Because to bring about a bunch of people who, most of them had sort of grown up with that generation where the fathers weren't emotionally present. The mothers ran the house. So we've got a lot of, I come from a typical Irish family where my dad went out to work and, my mother said to my dad, "You never say you love me." My dad would say, "I'm here, all right." And that was the sort of that generation. So, what the man said when, so we were kind of rallying against all of that. And I think, a lot of us had massive issues with authority, whether it was what went on at home or at school or just, in the 70s, I don't know what it was like up north, but here, everyone could hit you. Neighbors would hit you. Teachers would hit you. I mean, it was just, you were running the gauntlet 24/7. And if it wasn't just casual people doing it, it was skinheads and teddy boys. And, you kind of embraced all of that being so outrageous. But what was fascinating is there were people all over the country, Steve Strait from Liverpool.
Yeah.
Martin Degman from the Midlands. You had Pete Burns, fabulous Pete in Sheffield as well. There was a whole scene all over the country of these dissident people that just somehow didn't fit into anywhere. So, and that's what to me was about, a celebration of all of those people that sort of shaped my existence and made me want to be the person I am.
Well, you should definitely do this new Taboo. That's quite a good title, actually. New Taboo. When we first started going, me and Phil Oakey used to go and hang out and watch Roxy music early in the 70s. They came to Sheffield quite a lot. And we used to dress we used to shop in women's clothes shops because there's more interesting clothes, basically, and platform booths, and it's all a glam thing, really. It didn't really have much of a sexual connotation, but we looked properly gay, but we weren't. I don't know if it's Sheffield or not, but we never got threatened or approached walking through the city centre looking as gay as humanly possible. Green fun fur jackets and, skin tight.
I think you were lucky because I was living in Warsaw around about 79. And we used to, myself and Martin Deborah used to get chased on a constant.
Really?
Oh yeah, the shoes came off and we used to run in our socks to the train station and get on the bus train. I mean, obviously Sheffield's a much nicer place.
Well, I don't know. I was always mystified because I lived on a council estate near the city centre. I mean, I just think I was naive. We were naive. We could have easily...
My older brother was a little bit of a dresser-upper. He used to go out with his mates to football with Clockwork Orange gear.
Oh, yeah, all that.
This stuff. So, I suppose it was around, and, obviously when I was 10 or 11, I used to get on the bus and go up to the West End, without telling my parents, and I'd go and just wander around all the fashion boutiques, staring at people and, just sort of absorbing, these kind of bohemian types wherever I went. And, I was definitely drawn towards the sort of bright lights of the city.
Yeah. Were you, did you know Malcolm McLaren and all that lot then?
I was managed by Malcolm for about a nanosecond because I was briefly in Bow Wow Wow right at the beginning.
Yes.
I did basically 2 gigs with him. I did a gig with the Manchester University. That was the second. The first gig I did was at the Rainbow Theatre, and I was shoved on at the end of the set instead of Annabella, where people were not happy. They were like, "Who's the fuck's this thing?" And I sang,
weren't you known as Lieutenant Lush?
I was, and I sang a song called Cast Iron Arm by Peanuts Wilson that I'm threatening to redo a version of because I listened to it the other day, and it's like, it's kind of quite mad. I got a cast iron on. Just like a rock and roll thing of Maren Malcolm McLaren's sense of humour. And then we did a gig at Manchester University, and it was sort of the end of punk. And I was dressed in all my lovely dreadlocks and hat and ribbons and Westwood, and people were spitting at me, and I was covered in gob.
Oh,
And
God.
so I picked up the mic stand and I rattled the crap, just laughing with it.
Shit.
That didn't go down well with Malcolm. So he thought I think they were surprised because they thought I was going to be lovely and soft and ladylike, and I was a bit of a navvy. So that was the end of I read that I'd been fired in the NME.
So do you and Annabella get on at all?
Oh, I loved Annabella, but Malcolm brought me in to kind of wind her up. He wanted me to, because at the time I was very feminine, and he wanted me to, he wasn't. Basically, I think Annabella wasn't sort of being as compliant as he wanted her to be. She was quite a personality as she is. She's a strong girl.
Mm.
And he was trying to get her to do things she didn't want to do. So he thought he'll bring me in as a sort of like, I don't know, sort of effeminate brat or something. And that didn't really work. And then, of course, there was the incident at Manchester. I think it was Manchester Poly or University. And that was it. It was the end of me as Lieutenant Love.
Oh, what a pity.
I know.
Who knows? He's going to be so different, right? Yeah. So singer-songwriter, fashion designer, you've done quite a lot of stuff. And I mean, fashion design. So you had your own label, fashion label?
Most of what I do in terms of clothes is just for myself.
Right.
I just, there's nothing worse going out to a party and seeing 4 people in the same jacket that you just got out of the trendiest store.
Yeah.
So I like, and also I don't say it's really with fashion. It's more like I've got my own thing. I'm just as likely to go into an Oxfam shop or a thrift store than I am into. I'm very by designer things. If I get given things, great. But I'm not a big fan of wearing like designers' names on me. I'd rather. I think for me, it's more about individual style rather than trying to, be fashionable.
Have you been watching Great Sewing Bee?
I've caught it a few times.
It's quite good, actually. I quite like it.
They're harsh, though, sometimes with these people. I feel like all of these programs, it takes so long to become a chef or a designer or anything, and we're trying to offer people these kind of like boil in a bag experiences. And I'm kind of bored of the whole, someone will be leaving us tonight.
I know, yeah.
Really? Do they have to leave? I think I've come up with this great concept of the comeback kid. All of these shows should have like the comeback section where if you like, any of these shows, if you can do something better than you did before, you should have to come back. Because, you don't learn from being sent home. It's not helpful.
No, you don't. It's all
Helpful.
But I mean, you were on The Voice, and so is that a real competition or is it all prefigured?
No, I think it is a format, but it's also there's it depends on who's the coach.
Right.
Because I was really hell bent on saying things to people, even if they got sent home, saying, okay, this is what I think you did wrong. This is where I think you could really help yourself. And by the way, understand that this moment is one moment and you're going to get a lot more rejection. Because do you think all us artists tell people what we don't get? Of course we don't. We only talk about the things that we get. But when we get turned down for something, that's not something we...
You should keep quiet, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't get that, And the Voice was a great gig. It was fun to do. And I really felt like I tried to give people helpful information about what I really felt and not be mindlessly critical, which is to say stuff that would happen them, maybe.
Well, I think people can smell your authenticity. And that's, I mean, and Tom Jones is authentic as well, he's just got a new album out, which went to #1, by the way.
Amazing.
I know, he's 80, for God's sake. So there's hope for us yet.
Yeah, I used to listen to Tom Jones records when I was a kid.
Me too.
I listened to, I'm a big fan of the Green Grass of Home, and obviously all the, What's Your Pussycat, and It's Not Unusual. I used to play those full volume in my bedroom.
What's New Pussycat? I love that song.
Whoa.
Yeah. Right. But you got a Tony nomination for Taboo. Forgot to mention that. That's an amazing achievement. I mean...
It is, and I think that the best parts of Taboo for me were the bits that were real, like the truthful bits. So I think there was too much emphasis, I think, on frivolity.
Yeah.
And I think if we do a new one, I want it to have a little bit more integrity and allow the characters, even I like the idea of Marilyn sort of coming out of the audience and saying, this character's nothing like me.
Oh, brilliant. Yes.
I think that would be fun, some interactive, experience is always fun in the theatre.
Well, I think there's I really like Jersey Boys, for instance. I thought that was a really good effort at a kind of biographical jukebox musical, but it had some depth to it because it did refer to real things that happened in their lives and sad things. And the same is true for Tina the musical, which, excuse me, I am a character in. Somebody plays me every night. I love that.
No, you were part.
You're used to this shit, but I don't get this very often, so I'm making the most.
Are you getting royalties?
No, of course I'm not. They didn't even ask me. Do you know how they portray me on stage? It's like,
I've seen it.
oh my God. I never wore a fucking stripy jumper, and I never had a curtain hairdo. So how dare they?
I have to say, when I saw it, I did think to myself, there was nothing like that.
No, there's nothing. He's like, hey up, Tina, has that ever seen a Fairlight? You don't need a band anymore. Give me a fucking break. Anyway, I'm bitter and twisted about that. So,
That's okay.
yeah. I wrote a question down on my notes here. It said, do you have the funk?
Yes.
I think you've got the funk. I think...
I worked with George Clinton about 4 years ago, which was amazing. I've always loved it. And I managed to persuade him to come and I basically got him to come into the studio and just basically orchestrate a new sort of version of the track that I'd written called Bigger Than War, which is on my album, and this is what I do. And it is a total tribute to George Clinton. And when I managed to get him to come into the studio, these things are not easy, as working with legendary people.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. And he came in and he did like some of his famous, like, so low, you can't get under it. But he got all the singers and he rearranged all the vocals, put new lyrics in, and they paid him in cash.
They want cash. They all want cash.
Under the table. I was like, yeah, babe.
Yeah? No, I did it. I did a production with Shabba Ranks, and he insisted on being paid in cash as well.
Oh, cool. I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And I worked with Bootsy as well. Have you ever worked with Bootsy?
Never met Bootsy. What a shame. I would love to meet Bootsy. What a lad. So
imagine this. I'm there. I'm like, it's like all my Christmases will come at once. I love Bootsy Collins, right? And he inspired Being Boiled, actually. I mean, all that Bernie Worrell stuff, and anyway, the whole funkadelic thing. And he comes in and he goes, "Hiya, Marty. How you doing?" And I'm going, "Oh my God, it's Bootsy, right?" The first thing he does, he's got a holder with him, and he tries to sell me a bunch of Bootsy merchandise. So I bought a couple of hats off him, like trucker caps, hand printed in gold ink. And I'm going, "How much do you want from us?" "Yeah, they're £10, Martin." And I'm going, "Oh, this is fucking too good to be true." I've still got them somewhere.
I would have bought one.
Yeah, definitely. But to sell your own merchandise, the first thing you say, I just thought that's just so, hardest working man in show business kind of territory, isn't it? Your raw vegan diet is doing you massively well, I think, by the looks of it.
Yeah, I mean, I did have a period at the beginning of the lockdown where I was maybe eating a little bit more than I should. I was having a lot of that, what we call vegan junk food.
Oh, right, okay.
Because just because something's vegan doesn't make it healthy.
No, of course.
Yeah. So, because, sugar, well, not sugar, but bread's vegan, and that can be evil.
Carbs, isn't it?
Yeah, just try to eat clean and try to eat less, exercise more, get out in nature, which is very, I'm obsessed with trees. I'm a bit obsessed with trees. So when I was in Australia's got the best trees. I don't know if you've ever seen them.
Yeah, the
incredible tree.
Yeah.
dreadlock trees that are amazing. And, you know, I know that trees communicate with each other. So
They do.
fascinated by it. I like to sit underneath them and hope I might hear something that's being said.
That's funny because my wife used to say that her best friend when she was young was a tree, and she used to go and sit and talk to it and stuff. It's the Irish thing again, I think. And fungi communicate, don't they, over vast distances? Did you know that?
Yeah, no, I watched this great documentary with Judi Dench about the secret life of trees, and it was so fascinating because I really did not understand how complex they are.
Oh, they really are. Yeah, they do communicate. They really do communicate.
They are life.
Yeah. I think. Oh yeah, I just wanted to mention about your work as a radio DJ. I think you're fucking good.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I think you have a natural talent for communication that doesn't get on people's nerves. You know, I mean, because some DJs can, and I'm apparently like that. You know, because I'm loud, but I don't mind anyway. They can think of what they think of what they want. But no, I just wanted to give you a shout out for the radio DJ thing, and also you know, I've been at a couple of your DJ gigs, and that's fucking awesome as well. So
yeah, I think, you know, what star sign are you?
Taurus.
Taurus, hopeless romantic.
I'm afraid so.
Geminis don't read the manual. We just swan in and think we could do everything. And we do sometimes fall flat on our faces. I mean, you know, there are times when, you know, winging it doesn't work. But I think that we have this kind of fearlessness around when people say, oh, you can't do that. You go, oh, yeah, I can do it. But we're happy to go and do it in public as well. Like when I first started DJing, I was doing house parties, you know, in the late sort of 80s, early 90s. And, you know, I was going and playing at like Hacienda. And it was like, I was literally learning on the job. I did some amazing mixes. I remember one night in that Hacienda, I was mixing something and I had a car crash of a mix. I was with John Please Women and he went to me, at least they know you're here. But yeah, no, I love it. And now I just, you know, I feel like fearless with it. I really enjoy it because it is like performing.
Yeah.
And when you're turning people onto music that you love, it's just a great feeling when you see that crowd kind of responding in that kind of, you know, people are out to have a great time. And I actually miss that. That's one thing
Me too.
I want to do it so badly.
Euphoria is much underrated. You know, communal joy is essential.
Also, I think, you know, just as I've got older, I think I've definitely come better at kind of embracing happiness and, you know, not in a kind of, you know, I don't want to be the fun one. I hate it when they try and make me into the fun one because I'm not. I'm quite cynical. But I think, you know, embracing joy is a really good thing. You know, I think it's important.
It really, I mean, God, if we learned anything from the lockdowns, I think it's that, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, we're near the end. I've just got to ask you some stupid smash hits type questions, which I ask everyone. What's your favourite film or one of them?
My favourite film?
Yeah.
Film. Oh, probably. Oh, I always get the name wrong. It's an Italian film, and it's called like some Crazy Life or something like that. I've got the name wrong, but it's about these two women who end up in a sort of sanatorium, and it's about like it's a bit of a Thelma and Louise thing, and it is just I've seen it 5 times, and I never watch things again. But I've just seen this, and I've turned so many people onto it, and everyone, even though there's subtitles, which I don't mind, everyone was says, "Oh my God, it's such a great film! It's the saddest ending." And I was like, first time I watched it, boom, and the woman came to serve my food, and I was sobbing.
Oh no!
I was like, I'm sorry. I think it's called The Craze, something La Vida, something. It's a really beautiful film, and I wish I could remember what it was actually called, but it's an Italian sort of, you know, Thelma and Louise type movie. It's beautiful.
Right. I'll have to look that up because, you know, I used to live in Venice for like 25 years, and so I can kind of understand Italian speech, and so I definitely want to watch it. Okay, book.
My favorite book. I'll tell you what my favorite book is, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Right. Yes.
It's a sort of self-help book about, you know, being present, trying not to, you know, to live in the now rather than the past or the future. As you know, as an artist, you know, you're always constantly being referred to in past context. You were this and you were that. And didn't used to be this.
Didn't used to be Martin Ware. I get quite a lot.
That's a great book.
Good. And TV show, past or present?
Probably The Naked Civil Servant.
Oh, it was fucking amazing, wasn't it?
Life-changing moment to discover that it was someone around before Bowie that had orange hair.
That was one of the great performances, and that made his career.
I went up to John Hurt in Cannes. I was there, and I went up to him and I said, I just have to tell you that your portrayal of French and Chris changed my life. And he turned around like this and he went, it changed mine. It did words for me. And I was like,
right. Okay, this is quite a good one for you, I think. An epiphanal moment, a moment in your life where it was like a fork in the road and you took one direction, changed your life for good or bad.
I think for me, actually really reading that book, The Power of Now, was a bit of a pivotal moment because I mean, yes, I went for a few more years of trauma before I kind of finally understood what I'd read in the book. But it was the first time I've read something and I could actually say, I think this is going to change my life.
Wow.
You know, it took a while because, you know, it's very easy to snap back to what you normally do.
Yeah.
This is the problem with being a human being. But I have to say that that book really, really changed my life. And, you know, it's not often you can say that.
Yeah, for sure. Other musical artist or composer?
Ooh. Well, my favourite lyricist would be Joni Mitchell, no question. Bowie, obviously. But there's so many, you know. I love, you know, the Human League, early Human League particularly. You know, us kids were obsessed with you guys.
Listen, podcast listeners, I haven't paid him to say this. I'm not making secret signals.
Maybe to say, and there's certain things that I still listen to as I love. You've also loving feeling. I love that. And I did tell you that my mum said they've ruined that song.
Yeah,
I was like, Mum,
that was the idea.
You understand? You know, that whole deconstruction, breaking the rules was so exciting. You know, after punk, you just thought nothing else could ever happen, and then suddenly you get that beautiful moment with you guys, Cabaret Voltaire.
Yeah.
You know, there were so many great things around at that time.
There really were. Ambition unfulfilled.
Well, I don't feel unfulfilled. I feel like I've got less disappointed as I got older. I feel like, you know, there have been periods where I felt a bit disappointed, and then I suddenly thought, you know what? I get to do what I love today, pretty much. You know, and whenever I do anything, I always do it with as much good grace as I can. And I think, you know, just I know that I'm lucky. I don't always get my own way. Of course, none of us do. Nobody ever gets everything they want, but the fact that I get to enjoy what I do pretty much all the time is, you know, there's nothing like it.
Well, that's a very grown-up way of looking at things. I'm terribly.
Well, I got there. It's taken me a while, I have to say, and I still have my petulant moments. Why am I doing this? And I always come to the conclusion when I've decided I'm not going to do something, I just go, the only person that's really going to be upset is me. So,
yeah.
You know, so I'm quite good at talking myself out of my bad ideas.
That's good. Favorite visual artist or conceptual artist? You know, it could be anything, installations or anything.
I think probably Lee Bowery, because, you know, he took things to a level that was so unusual at the time. The way that he played with his physical size, the way that he distorted his body. You know, the rest of us were kind of going out of our way to use things to disguise what we thought were our defects.
Yeah.
whereas Lee was wrapping gaffer tape around his stomach to create huge big bumps of, fat, and extending his feet and plaster casting his eyes over. It was quite radical what he did. So I think he's probably my favorite sort of visual artist.
Interesting. And which of your own work are you most proud of? I've kind of asked you this before. Which is your favourite period? I just meant, if there's one song you could pick, this epitomises what I can do.
I actually would choose the favourite thing I've done recently. Oh, you mean from the old days?
No, it could be from any time. I mean, if it's new, it's good because I direct people.
I did a cover because I did a cover of an Iggy Pop song with you, but I did a cover of Fun Time on one of my albums, Cheapness and Beauty, and I was in LA, and I saw Iggy, and I was really oh my god, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey man, I love what you did with my song." He said, "I love it, and you rocked it out," and I was like, "Oh my god, I was really hoping you'd like it." He goes, "No, I fucking love it, man," and I was so pleased because, when someone you love that much validates something like that, that's a nice feeling. So I think for me, and obviously, meeting Bowie, things like that, that is pretty amazing, and, even though I was famous myself, I was still very much a fan,
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we toured with Iggy, so I witnessed him in action every night, and it was just mesmerising. It was never 2 nights the same, never. Okay, final question. What's your favourite synth? Yeah. Come on, you must have played a few in your time.
No, I don't play, but I think probably you
must have messed around a bit.
My least favourite one is I love the Rhodes, right? The Rhodes sound. Sometimes it did get a bit overused at a point in the 80s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like all those kind of analog synths, things like that, like early drum machines.
Yeah.
Still think that stuff sounds super fresh. I still feel like, if things like the Normal, when you listen to those songs, EBOD, it just, when was it made? You just go, it's so strange.
I mean, Warm Leatherette is just a magnificent piece of work, and it still
sounds exciting.
Exactly.
Even things like, Roadrunner, Richard, and things like Mink DeVille, I still listen to those things all the time.
Yeah.
Exciting pop records that just make no sense, but are just beautiful.
Well, this has been beautiful. I was
never going to say no, Martin, because you're one of my heroes. So.
Oh, shut up. Not having that bullshit.
You're not allowed to be nice to people in Britain because it's about as good to Take it, Martin. Well.
All right, okay. Thank you very much. No, it's great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm really looking forward to what you're coming out with next. So, and by the way, lest I forget, you need to send me some shit that I can put some music around.
Okay, I will. I'm on it. I'm coming.
Because you're going to do... I shouldn't talk about it. It's a secret, right? The whole...
No, it's not a secret. But I'm just going to release... I'm just taking a very anarchic approach to releases. I've got an album coming out next Friday, but then I'm also putting out about 5 or 6 singles as well. So I'm just putting it out because, I want it out there.
When's your birthday?
14th of June.
Well, I'm going to try and put this podcast out as close to possible to your birthday. And then if you are planning to do a kind of
Drop.
The drop, then it would be a great, publicity thing, hopefully. Absolutely. Yeah, brilliant. Love you, man.
Thanks, Martin. Give my love to everyone, yeah?
Yeah, will do. Thank you so much. Bye.